let's say you're just starting to get into woodworking and you're not trying to go off the deep end and buy every power tool there is. You don't have a table saw, you don't have a chop saw or miter saw, you don't have a radial arm saw, and you want to cut a miter. So I'm going to show you how they did it 150 years ago without any of that stuff. There are various ways, and we'll start with the kind of the crudest way, and we'll work our way up with more refined ways. And let's start off with the first one. We have this piece of molding here, and let's say I want to make a frame out of it. So we're going to make what are called inside miters or frame miters. So one thing you can do is just draw a 45-degree line here. This is kind of a crude way to do it, but you definitely can do it. Just intersect that, and we'll cut that with a back saw. So here I'm just using my dovetail saw to cut this. It's a finer cut, and theoretically you want to cut just outside of your line. We'll just try to follow that line. And that's it, and you try to get as close to the line as possible. So that's a relatively crude way to do it, but it certainly can be done that way. And here's another way, and that's to use a miter box. This is a Stanley 355 miter box. So I have my workpiece in here, and this is the reference fence and the base platform. So we'll stick that in there. You can use this thing to lock it down a little bit, hold it in place, and we'll just cut that piece. So this is going to give you a more reliable cut, of course, than that first one. And this is often good enough, but then not always are you happy with this cut. It might be off by a millimeter. You might have it too long. You never want it too short. So it might be a little long. So what do we do next? This is a shooting board, and this particular one is called a miter shooting board. It has two 45-degree angles here. So what this miter shooting board does, let's say I have this mitered already. I cut it off the saw. I'm not happy with it because I really needed to get to that mark, and it was just a little too chunky there. So you can use the miter shooting board. This is a number 8 Stanley plane in there. And you can just come in real slowly, or quickly if you'd like, to set the blade more, and just get to a hair's width, and get it exactly where you want it. So that's a miter shooting board. Now, one of the things is you have to make sure that this block here is at least as high as your workpiece, and it's actually not. So I could get a little tear out here, which I did a little bit there. The other thing is this type of shooting board only works for inside miters, like for frames and things like that. It doesn't work properly for casework. So let's say we have something like this. Let's say I was going to put this around here, let's say. So let's say that's a piece of molding I would put around there. So that's a different miter. That actually won't work here because, let's see how this goes. So if I put this, there's no way to get this in there and have it. So if I go like this, that's bad because it'll just blow out. And I'll show you what I mean by blowing out. There's no support in the back. And it might work if it's super sharp, but it's not a good idea. You're going to get all this business here. So and plus, usually you're referencing off of this side and not out here. So for that, you need another type of shooting board. So this is called a donkey's ear shooting board, and this will accommodate this molding. Right, so if I have it in there, it will accommodate it, and I can work from the other side for the opposite piece and flip it over. So why is it called a donkey's ear? I guess if you imagine that's the head, this would be the ear flopping down. So let's say you've overcut it a little bit, and I'll just show you how that works. just sneak up on it very nicely. I got it to half a pencil width, so you can really sneak up on it. Better than a table saw. The finish, I would say, is pretty darn clean here. Not perfect, but pretty good and excellent for gluing surfaces. So that's another reason. So if you're a power tool user, there actually is a role sometimes. It could be. You don't have to have a shooting board, but there is a role sometimes. It really helps you get fine cuts. There are alternatives. You could use a disc sander that has a table that bevels, and you can use a table saw and just have really accurate jigs. Sometimes your table saw is off. If that happens, you can have this as a backup. Also, this is nice to have in the shop. You just pick it up real quickly. You don't have to get out any heavy jigs. This is usually a very light jig. So that's the donkey's ear. And the other one is just the miter shooting board. So let's show you some other options. So this is a large shooting board. This is a basic end grain shooting board. It's just kind of on the big side. And this is used to square off the edge of a board when you need to do that. How often do you need to do that? It depends on what kind of work you do. So here I have the mother of all shooting boards, planes, or shoot board planes. This one's from 1866, just after the Civil War. And I have a track here, prevents it from moving out too far. I have it set fairly thin. So that's the end grain shooting board. Now, what I can do is take a piece, a triangle, set that in. And what we'll do is clamp this up a little bit. You can't see it off camera, but I'm putting a couple Irwin clamps on the back of this board to hold it in place. And now we got ourselves a miter shooting board. So you don't have to make that triangular shooting board, but it's kind of easier to just have around. So that's another one. I'll just show you the shavings as they're coming out. Are they coming out? They're pretty thin. I have it set pretty thin here. That's how it looks. So fairly clean cut there. So back to the donkey's ear again. Let's say we wanted to make a box and miter all the corners. So you certainly cannot do it with this, right? You can't do it with this because the plane would have to be several inches high, and you need a block of wood that high so corners don't blow out. Although with a miter, it probably won't blow out too much if you're going this way. But regardless, if anything, you probably want to try your hand at using the donkey's ear first. The only problem I find, it's a little awkward sometimes. Let me get the proper plane for it. It works, but a little awkward sometimes. It's just a longer thing. So I actually use like an opposite donkey's ear where the piece is moving in, so you're not like struggling to hold the piece on. Let me show you that. So this is a contraption and a half. So I made some wedges, and I got this at 45 degrees. I'm going to use that big plane with it. So I find it easier for the piece to be kind of going with gravity than fighting it. Actually, I don't know if this edge is square. I guess it was that way. Right. And what I would actually do is use a regular hand plane, kind of roughly plane it normally. But you could see it's starting to already create that miter there. So that's, I don't know what this is called. It's just a wedged shooting board. Some people call it a donkey's ear as well. I guess you can call it that if you want, with the excited donkey's ear with the ear pointing up. So this is a miter jack, and you can cut 45 degrees on here as well. You cut miters, and on the back side, you can cut 90 degree if you need some kind of vise or whatever to shoot that. So let's show how that works. So people always say, aren't you afraid of digging into this? Well, you could. You just gotta go at it slowly, and when you feel the resistance, you just stop. So the nice thing about this is, let's say I put 3 miters together and I realize that 4th miter is not coming together well. Well, I could just come back in the back here and just knock this up a degree or half a degree or whatever. Just put a little shim in the back, and you can really adjust that miter very finely and just plane away again. So that's the miter jack. All right, well, next up, it's not actually a shooting board, but it's another thing to make miters without power tools. I don't use this much because I have a better tool that I'm going to show you at the end that I like the best. After showing all those shooting boards, if I can use the last tool that I'm going to show you to make a miter, I'm going to use that, and I'll show you exactly why. So I don't know if I've ever cut a piece this big with this, but there are 2 dangerous looking blades here. And let's see, we'll cut it off like that. And you just go, let's see if we get a better camera angle so you can see both at the same time. There we go. So you just go crunch. There we go. And it will give you a perfect 90 degrees, if I can get my piece out of there without killing myself. Boop. There we go. So that's going to be, should be a perfect 90 degrees. It's always, the first 3 miters are always a perfect 90 degrees. It's that 4th miter that could be a problem. So I showed you all those jigs, which are really pretty cheap to make. You can make that on a shoestring budget, and they work well. But what I find, say, let's see, here's the finish off of the plane. But this is the Lion miter trimmer, and this thing gives you the finest cut, in my opinion. So let's put it in here. It's set already at 45 degrees. And you can really sneak up on this and get a really fine cut. Do another cut here. See, I could do this with 1 finger. That's how nicely it cuts. And you could see how smooth it is. Although this has, I don't know why this pine has a defect. Let me get another broader cut here. And we'll do a thin one. And that's a beautiful miter. Nice thing about this, you can set any inside angle. You still can't do outside miters with this. So for casework, it actually does not work well. And that's a lot of what I do. So there's no way to set this in either side and have this work properly. Again, you could try to balance it like this, but you're not really referencing off of the proper face. So for that, I would use the donkey's ear for casework. But if I'm making a frame or something, this Lion miter trimmer, for me, is the way to go. This one I happened to get lucky. I found it for $60 at a flea market. I was able to sharpen these blades using the Tormek that I have over here. And I just made this jig. So that was a few of the different ways that you could cut miters, from the most simple jigs that really don't cost much and are pretty easy to make. You make in an hour or two, to all the way to some of these fancier ones, these Lion miter trimmers. I'm going to put that other guillotine thing up for sale. I don't really use it that much. But yeah, just start off with a shooting board. You can even work with a little block plane, especially if you're doing small boxes and things like that to start off with. But it doesn't take a big investment. You can enjoy the journey of woodworking with just these simple tools, because a lot of it is enjoying the process, not always the end result. Same with the club making. A lot of it is just enjoying what you're doing at the time. When I make it, okay, I'll look at the piece for a little bit, but I enjoy the whole process as I'm going along.